Wing Commander Mohit Rana, Flight Lieutenant Aditya Bal, two young and promising IAF pilots, killed in a tragic MiG-21 crash. Families inconsolable. +400 MiG-21s crashed in 5 decades. Over 200 pilots and 50 civilians killed. Why is MiG-21 still in the skies?
Why are MiG-21s still in Indian Air Force service? What is the compulsion for the Indian Air Force to continue using the MiG-21? Is the notorious reputation of being a flying coffin justified? Or are the two young pilots who were killed in last night's crash only the latest in an endless statistic dogging this once legendary aircraft type? I'm Shiv Aroor. This is 5 Live. Here we're going to answer questions that every Indian, shaken, shattered and grieving by this latest tragedy, is asking. Many of the answers are complex. There are no black and white answers in combat aviation. It's an emotional issue, but there are some clear-cut answers, and I promise that by the end of this show, you will be better informed, you will probably be sadder, but you will have more information to deal with this tragedy. Joining me in just 10 minutes from now will be Air Chief Marshal B.S. Dhanoa, former Chief of the Indian Air Force, a person who has flown extensively on the MiG-21. He's going to give us some straight answers in just 10 minutes from now. Welcome, Air Chief. Thank you very much for being with us. We will answer all of your questions to all of our viewers. And I know you're looking to India today and to me to make you better briefed to handle this tragedy. First, the headlines. Sensational Popular Front of India linked to Praveen murder case. Wife of accused confirms he is part of the radical outfit. Barmer, the Chief Minister, asked Centre to ban PFI. Says he's ready to implement the Yogi bulldozer model in Karnataka. Another chilling murder in Mangaluru. 23-year-old Fazil hounded and hacked to death by 4 to 5 assailants. Gruesome killing caught on camera. Massive crowd on street for last rites. Big India Today scoop on cash for job scam in Bengal. Enforcement Directorate probes 3 Arpita Mukherjee-linked companies. Agency suspects that Arpita made director of these companies after her association with recently sacked Minister Partha Chatterjee. Showdown over Rashtrapatni Jibe in Parliament. Smriti Irani meets President Murmu as Adhir Ranjan seeks time to meet her and apologize. Congress leader says it was a slip of tongue. Accuses BJP of making mountain out of a molehill. He speaks first and exclusive on India Today. Delhi High Court issues notice to Congress leaders Jairam Ramesh, Pawan Khera and Netta D'Souza in a defamation suit by Smriti Irani, asking them to remove derogatory tweets in the illegal bar controversy of Goa. Congress says ready to fight in court. Wing Commander Mohit Rana, Flight Lieutenant Aditya Bal, two young Indian Air Force pilots who met their end in a tragic MiG-21 fighter aircraft crash in Rajasthan's Barmer on Thursday night. Their families, as you can imagine, are devastated, and the nation is in mourning for these two young lives. The Indian Air Force has ordered a court of inquiry to ascertain the cause of the accident, but India is exploding with angry questions about why the MiG-21 is still in service. First, what happened?
Wing Commander Mohit Rana, 36 years old,
Flight Lieutenant Advitiya Bal, 26 years old. Two young Indian Air Force fighter pilots tragically killed in a MiG-21 crash on Thursday night in Rajasthan. Hailing from Mandi, Himachal Pradesh, Mohit was flight commander at his fighter squadron. A passionate combat aviator, he was on the threshold of greater things, including command of a squadron in the future. The younger of the two pilots, Advitiya, had joined the squadron just a few weeks ago. His final flight was a training sortie with his senior.
हम भर्ती इसलिए होती है कि हम दुश्मन से लड़ें और उनको मारें, ना कि अपने वेपन से ही हम खुद कैजुअल्टी हो जाएं। और मैं भारत सरकार से यही अपील करता हूं, प्लीज़ सर, ये MiG-21 अब सर बंद कीजिए। इन गरीब बच्चों की और जान मत लीजिए सर। मेरी यही आगे उनके आगे अपील है सर, बंद कीजिए सर प्लीज़।
It is not known yet why their MiG-21 crashed into the ground near Barmer. A question only a full crash investigation can answer. The two young pilots, their lives cut so painfully short, are only the latest statistics in a 6-decade history of India's longest-serving fighter plane. Mohit and Advitiya join over 400 Indian Air Force pilots who died in crashes of the MiG-21 over the last 6 decades. Since it was first inducted in 1963, a crash record that has earned the Soviet-era fighter disturbing nicknames: Flying Coffin, Widowmaker. The cycle of crash and tragedy is an endless one. Accidents will happen, say experts, especially in the high-risk business of combat aviation. While that's definitely true, does anything justify keeping fighter jets that are all but vintage in the air? Does anything justify not giving all pilots, especially the young, the best and safest possible equipment? These questions will continue to linger as family after family is changed forever. Bureau Report, India Today. Since last night, broadly 5 questions have been asked about this MiG-21 crash. People who are angry and grieving, but also want information and clear-cut answers to those questions. Over 400 MiG-21s have crashed so far in the past 60 years. Over 200 pilots and 50 civilians have been killed in those incidents. Well, owing to the numerous crashes, the MiG-21 has been dubbed Flying Coffin, Widowmaker, and other such troubling nicknames. But why are MiG-21s still in the skies if they continue to claim lives? Is it an easy answer? Is it a black and white answer? Or are there shades of grey? Take a look at this report. Two new young faces of an Indian Air Force aircraft with a singularly notorious reputation. Two pilots killed in the prime of their lives and combat careers, leaving devastating questions that haven't been answered properly in years. As the Indian public and social media explode in anger and sorrow for answers, we try and bring them to you. First, the facts. At the height of the Cold War in 1963, India began inducting the Soviet MiG-21 supersonic fighter. Across the next 6 decades, nearly 900 MiG-21s of different variants were inducted, with 60% of them licensed built in India by Hindustan Aeronautics. So far, nearly half of all Indian MiG-21s have crashed, killing in excess of 200 pilots. In the year 2000, Indian MiG-21s were upgraded with new sensors and weapons and branded Bison. It was in this spruced-up MiG-21 type that Wing Commander Abhinandan Vartaman scored a kill against the Pakistan Air Force in 2019 before being shot down himself. And now let's try and answer each of the burning questions on everyone's mind today. Question 1. Why do MiG-21s crash so much? Experts believe that more MiG-21s have crashed than any other fighter because they've formed the sustained bulk of the Indian Air Force's fighter aircraft inventory for well over half a century. More numbers, more use, and more years in service translates into higher crash statistics. Question 2. Why the hell are MiG-21s still in service? The answer to this should infuriate every Indian. The Indian Air Force has had to keep its MiG-21 fleet in service much longer than it would have wanted, simply because of the massive delays in induction of new fighters. Question 3. Is the Indian Air Force in such a crunch that it still needs MiG-21s? This is actually the clincher question. The Indian Air Force is indeed in a crunch thanks to delays. It must maintain a certain minimum squadron strength to guard India's skies, but delays in the indigenous Tejas program, ugly politics over acquisitions like the Rafale, and India's notoriously slow-paced procurement procedure has bedeviled all forward planning, forcing the Indian Air Force to keep flying these vintage jets. Question 4. What justifies making young pilots fly MiG-21s? Well, that's just it. The Indian Air Force doesn't have a choice unless the government says enough is enough. Combat aviation is a process-driven business with no room for emotions. Until the government speeds up acquisition of replacement jets and trainers, the Indian Air Force has no option but to bolster its squadron strength with MiG-21s. And finally, question 5. Will the government put process aside and take a hard call? This is the multi-billion-dollar question. So far, the government has pushed the pedal on acquiring indigenous Tejas fighters, but a stopgap program to buy over 100 foreign jets has drifted for years without clear forward movement. The questions we've answered here aren't new ones. They've burned for 2 decades and counting. Will the Indian Air Force get a new lease of life? And soon. Bureau Report, India Today. And since the crash was reported last night on India Today, these are the questions that most Indians watching the story have been asking and have been sending to me. Number 1, why do MiG-21s crash so much or appear to crash so much? 2, why are MiG-21s still in service? Number 3, is the Indian Air Force in such a crunch that it still needs to keep MiG-21s in service? Number 4, what justifies making young pilots fly in MiG-21s? And number 5, will the government put process aside and take a hard call? Who better than Air Chief Marshal Birender Singh Dhanoa, former Chief of the Indian Air Force, to join me live for a clear take on what is an emotive story, a story that invokes a lot of anger because in popular perception, there is a reputation that the MiG-21 has in the Indian context. Air Chief Dhanoa, welcome, sir. Thank you very much for being with India Today. We very much value your time on a difficult day like this. I'd like to start, of course, by offering my condolences to the entire Indian Air Force family, because I know even after retirement, you are all one service and one family. It's a sad day for everyone. But I would like to begin by asking you, Air Chief, why the MiG-21 is still in service. It is not clearly understood by the general public, especially when MiG-21s crash and lives are lost, sir.
First of all, good afternoon, Shiv. My condolences to the families of Wing Commander Rana and Flight Lieutenant Bal. Fatal accident is just not acceptable. Accidents do happen in the Air Force, but the fighters are fitted with ejection seats and you're supposed to get out. I mean, a fatal accident is just not acceptable, and I just pray that they get the fortitude to bear the loss of their loved ones. Having said that, let me answer that question of why the MiG-21s are still flying. The MiG-21s are still flying because the replacement has not come. You know how long it has taken for the MMRCA deal, and that too the government had to shortcut it and sign a contract for 2 Rafale squadrons. We have ordered 2 LCS squadrons which have come, and we have ordered 4 more LCS squadrons. After I retired, 1 more squadron of Su-30 was erected. But the question is, the aircraft still have total technical life left, and our squadron strength is very low. So we cannot afford to phase them out unless we get a replacement. As and when their total technical life is getting over, that particular aircraft is going out of service. It is not that my squadron, my aircraft type 96 is out of service, but it is there because it's a necessity. And second thing, let me assure you here is, every aircraft that flies is fully serviceable. At the age of 62, just about 15 days or 20 days before my retirement, I went and flew the MiG-21. Why will I take such a risk if the aircraft are not serviceable? Aircraft which are offered for flying are always serviceable and flyworthy.
Air Chief, are you saying that, while there is technical, life left in these aircraft, the fact that these aircraft are still in service is because a replacement hasn't come, which means that this is a compulsion. It is the circumstances, the delays you're saying of a replacement aircraft to come, the fact that, procurements have been plagued by politics and delays and all kinds of things. You're saying that the Air Force has had to hold on to the MiG-21s longer than perhaps it would have liked. You would have liked to perhaps phase them out earlier, you're saying.
You are right. We would have phased them out earlier if the replacements are available. You don't phase out an aircraft with technical life left after you have modernized it, unless there is a new aircraft which is going to come which is far superior to this particular aircraft. We have invested money and modernized the MiG-21 to a MiG-21 Bison.
Yes.
And crash, unfortunately, which has happened yesterday is a trainer, and that is the older version of the MiG-21. It is not the Bison.
In your view, sir, crashes are always complicated affairs, and like you said, fatal accidents are unacceptable because there are certain safety features, including in the MiG-21, like ejection seats. They are complex issues. Court of inquiries are very, very complex issues. But in your view, sir, this was a night flight, 2 pilots in this aircraft. What could conceivably have gone wrong, sir?
Most probably, probability of a bird hit are low. So it will either be a technical defect or it will be a human error crew. Now, what is going to be the cause, I should not prejudge it because that is for the court of inquiry to find out. But only thing what really pains me is the pilots did not get out. They are supposed to eject, and I have also ejected. But that is what the ejection seat is supposed to get out of. In the end, you are supposed to get out of that aircraft if it is beyond your control, for whatever reasons. And but let me tell you, when that aircraft was offered for flying and the 2 pilots signed for that aircraft and taxied out, it would have been a fully serviceable aircraft.
Yes. Keeping in view the fact that this was a fully serviceable aircraft, sir, how does one explain to the public, the general public perception, that the MiG-21 is crashing more than other aircraft, taking more lives than other pilots? Is that a justified reputation that the MiG-21 has? It's a very troubling nickname. Things like, flying coffin, which are very unsavory phrases applied to an aircraft. But how would you answer people who say this is a justified reputation that the aircraft has because it's still killing pilots?
No, first of all, let me tell you, MiG-21 has had one of the highest figures in accidents because it has been in the largest number in the Indian Air Force.
Yes.
It has served the longest. My aircraft, Type 96, which phased out in December 2019, was inducted in 1975. The MiG-27, which was inducted almost 10 years later in 85, also phased out in 2019. So the span of service of the MiG-21 has been very long. Number of aircraft have been very long. The flying that done by MiG-21 is very long. If you take the rate of accidents, that is per 100,000 hours of flying, then it is not that the MiG-21, I mean offhand I can't tell you the figures, but it is not that the MiG-21 has the highest rate of flying accidents per 100,000 hours of flying. So it is not that you can, and flying coffin means what? I have flown the MiG-21 all my life. I was flight commander of a squadron in Jamnagar for 4 years. We lost 2 aircraft. Yes, we lost for bird hit over range. Otherwise, 0 accidents. I was station commander in Nalia for 2.5 years. 0 accidents. I was commanding the squadron in Batinda. 0 accidents. Only is, yes, we lost Ahuja in the Kargil war. He was shot down. But otherwise, we had 0 accidents. So it is, you can't, I mean, if it was a flying coffin, in such a long career of mine, I should have seen many more accidents.
Yes.
It is not true. It is, yes, compared to the aircraft that it replaced, the Hunter and the Nat, the Hunter, it is a slightly unforgiving aircraft. It requires a lot of skill. And you have to be on the ball at all the time, as compared to the, you can say, the previous. And the subsequent aircraft are far easier to fly. You see the accident record of a new generation aircraft. Like you take Pilatus, the basic trainer. We flew, when I was the chief, it flew 100,000 hours without an accident, touch wood. Okay, so the new technology comes in, touch wood, LCA, touch wood, biggest success story. Okay, they have not had an accident in their entire flight test program. It's very, very creditable to ADA and the National Flight Test Center. Otherwise, you look at the other aircraft in flight testing, how many aircraft have we and pilots have we lost in other aircraft that were inducted into the Indian Air Force?
Yes.
Okay, so new technology is obviously far safer and far better. And this is an aircraft that was designed as a high altitude, high speed interceptor to shoot down American bombers. Now you are using it for everything. Obviously, you are not flying in the envelope that the original designers wanted you to fly. Why are you doing it? Because you didn't have any other aircraft. And we are making the best of whatever we have got. So to say that it is a flying coffin, I don't think so that statement is correct at all. And why will I fly a flying coffin 15 or 20 odd days before I retire? Am I stupid?
I'm glad you clarified that, Air Chief, which is why I asked you, because I think the public needs to hear it from someone no less than a Chief of Air Staff. Also, since you've had an overview about, procurement, planning and replacement, sir, by when would you have liked the MiG-21s to be phased out completely? Obviously, they're being hung on to because the replacement is not there. Like you explicitly said, you would have liked to replace them earlier. By when do you think India should have said goodbye to the MiG-21s, sir? And what attempts did you make when you were chief? Obviously, the replacements did not come on time.
No, when I retired, I think the plan was, next 1 or 2 years they should all go. But as the total technical life of the airframe will get over. And the LCA, as you know, we have signed a contract for 4 more LCA squadrons. So those LCA squadrons will start coming in. So our numbers will also not go down. It is, you see, you are short of numbers. You have an aircraft that is fully serviceable, that has been modernized. It has got life available. You can't throw away a car just because and you do not have any car. You got to fly that same aeroplane. You got to fight with it. You see what happens at such a short notice. Pulwama happened. Did you think about it before that? 1 week before that? No. Then what happened after that? We had 26th and we had 27th. You see what has happened in Galwan. Suddenly you flare up. So that time what do? You can't write off, wind up all your squadrons and then suddenly say, no, I don't have aircraft. You do the best with what you have got. Unfortunately, the replacements have not come. And politics. The 2 squadrons of Rafale, you saw how much politics was there behind it. And the 114, like you said, multi-role fighter aircraft, it's an urgent requirement because we don't have the aircraft. As simple as that.
I want to ask you a little bit about the politics of it, Air Chief Dhanoa, because you were in office during the time when a lot of politics were being played over procurement. What kind of effect does that have, sir, on those delays? And obviously, there's a direct correlation between those delays and the fact that you have to hang on to aircraft that should have been retired.
You see, whenever you politicize the defense acquisition process, everybody gets overcautious. And every file which you should move in, say, 1 month from one table to another will start taking 6 months, because now everybody is scared. It always happens. I mean, you are doing the biggest. If you have some evidence, something, please do something and prosecute the people and send them to jail. But if you keep just throwing muck without having anything in your this thing, and then you delay the whole process, you are doing a great disservice to the nation, and especially to the armed forces and our military capability. So it is this which causes you to, why are we flying the aircraft? Because we don't have any other aircraft. As simple as that.
Do you think with the Tejas fighters, finally going to start, entering service, the second deal, I mean, sir, plus the prospective deal for over 100 foreign fighters, the multi-role fighter aircraft acquisition, you think with these now on the horizon, things will stabilize and, the retirement of the MiG-21s won't be further delayed?
The Tejas, we have already signed the contract.
Yeah.
So they should be coming. If there are no production delays, Tejas we already signed that. Multi-role fighter aircraft, I know we are going about the same rigmarole all over again.
Yeah.
Trying to re-evaluate another aircraft. But I don't know. You have to press. Someone has to press the fast forward button and get it. Otherwise, you don't know when the next crisis will happen.
Yeah.
And that particular period of time, you should not be again fighting an F-16 with a Bison.
Can the government fix this if it wants to quickly, sir? I know this is a complicated matter. I don't want to oversimplify it because these are not things that can be changed overnight. But a lot of angry young Indians especially, sir, they're asking, why can't the government just take a hard decision on something like this and say, look, we will do this in a time-bound manner, get the Indian Air Force slightly more modern fighters that it needs so that we can speed up the retirement of these MiG-21s, because like you yourself said, you would have liked to retire them much earlier than wait till the end of their technical life. Does the government have the power to end this situation, sir?
The government, obviously the procurement process is controlled by the government.
Yeah.
This is a question best answered by them because there are a lot of it to it. And there's a procedure. We have become, slaves to the procedure. I think the national security priority has to override that, and you have to take a call. That is all that I can say.
One final, just two more questions, Air Chief. Pilots flying the MiG-21 today in service, many people ask, how would they be feeling? Would they be nervous about flying the MiG-21? Like you yourself said that, before they get into the cockpit, the aircraft is completely fit to fly and certified. There is no suspicion. There is no two ways about whether the aircraft is fit to fly or not. Having been in service, having been a pilot through your entire life, having flown so much of the MiG-21, what is the mood in service after an accident of this kind, sir?
Actually, after an accident, what happens is the next day everybody flies. This is one of the traditions of the Air Force. Unless there has been a grounding because a technical defect has been observed and one-time checks have been ordered across the fleet. Otherwise, normally the tradition is that after an accident everybody flies. And it is a part of the game. And the thing is, I always maintain accidents will happen. This fighter flying, it will happen. Only thing, fatal shouldn't take place.
Yes.
Then that is very, very sad. And as far as what I have always seen is that this is not the first time, we have come to this crisis. This crisis comes to us again and again. And the reason why it is coming to us again and again is because now you see the aircraft is towards the end of its total technical life. The number of technical defects has increased a hell of a lot. Maintaining them is very difficult. Show me one car on the road that is as old as the MiG-21.
Yeah.
You don't have one. So now how are we maintaining it? We are maintaining it because of the skills of our maintenance branch and the overall facility that we had set up in HA. That is how we are able to maintain it. But it is more of a necessity than you can say, would I desire? The answer is no. Do I have to do it? Answer is yes.
You're being very candid, Air Chief, and I expected nothing less from someone like you who calls a spade, and I think that's what India needs to hear at a time like this, you know, not a sugar-coated kind of version of events. So I'd like to ask you my final question, Air Chief, which is to all young Indians watching right now, you know, either those who have just entered service or those who are in the flying academies or in the academies or looking at the Air Force as a prospective career, what would your message be to them, sir? Because I can tell you since last night, whether it is on Instagram, whether it is on Facebook, whether it is on Twitter, whether it is on messages, people are angry, they're confused, they're looking for answers. As a former Air Chief, addressing people who might want to be in the Air Force and future fighter pilots, what would be your message to them, Air Chief?
No, Air Force is a very professional service. Flying is conducted in a very professional manner. All aircraft that are airborne have been signed serviceably, and there is no shortcuts being taken, because in this game you cannot take a chance. Remember MiG-21, there was a time when we were doing our training, MOFT, MiG operational flying training was being carried out in MiG-21.
Yes.
Because the advanced generator had not come. Now Hawk has taken its place. So all those accidents in the training centers, they have reduced because those pilots did not have hours. We have got a few squadrons left, and people who come there are very, very well trained. I mean, Hawk is a fantastic training platform from which most of the people do come to the Bison. So it is a I'm not saying it's a very safe flying environment, but it's a military flying environment. So it's a very professional service. You know, you should be very proud to join it.
Air Chief Marshal Birender Singh Dhanoa, always a pleasure speaking to you, sir. Thank you for being honest and taking all of these questions. I know many of these questions have complicated layers, but who better than someone like you who was in the hot seat on these very issues only a couple of years ago to answer them, to reassure India, to clarify and give people the information they need to process a terrible tragedy of this kind. Like you rightly said, it's not the first time it has happened. We can only pray that it does not happen again. Air Chief Dhanoa, our pleasure. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, since Wing Commander Mohit Rana and Flight Lieutenant Advitya Bal have become the faces of this notorious statistics, and I hope all of our viewers are better equipped to process what's happening now with the information that's been provided, you know, not by just anyone, but by a former Air Chief. I want to take you now to Jammu, which is the hometown of the younger of the two pilots, Flight Lieutenant Advitya Bal. 26 years old, he had joined the squadron in Utarlai barely weeks ago. Just 26 years old. It is heartbreaking. India Today's Sunilji Bhatt is with some of his family members. His parents and brother have flown from Jammu to Delhi. They're on their way to Jodhpur now to receive the body of their loved one. Sunil has spent the entire day with the extended family in Jammu. Sunil, I can only imagine what it's like being there. Tell us about the conversations you've had with the family, Sunil.
Absolutely, Shiv. It's very heartbreaking, and we have been here since morning, and you know, it becomes very difficult for even us journalists to report on such, you know, cases. A family has lost its young, bright child, you know, and he had big dreams in his eyes. He wanted to serve Mother India, and that is why he joined Air Force. The family told me in the morning that it was his childhood dream to join the Air Force, and that is why he was pursuing his school education from the Sainik school, and then he cracked the NDA exams, and finally he got inducted in the Air Force. But unfortunately, this young, bright life was cut short because of this tragic incident that took place in Rajasthan's Barmer yesterday. But everyone is asking that why is MiG-21 still continuing in the Air Force? Why is it still being used by the Air Force? But as the former Air Chief Marshal was saying, that the procurement process is getting delayed, and they are not getting replacement for it. But families are asking. We spoke to these family members, the family members of Flight Lieutenant Aditya Bal, and they clearly said that the government must take a decision on this, because after how long, will families like these continue to suffer? Young, bright lives are getting lost because of this, indecisiveness of the government. I will again try and get a word from a family member of Flight Lieutenant Aditya Bal. जी, मैं समझ सकता हूँ आपके लिए इस समय संकट की घड़ी है, हमारी संवेदनाएं आपके साथ हैं। जो MiG-21 विमान जो है, जिसके लगातार इसके हादसे हो रहे हैं, अभी आप देश के रक्षा मंत्री को क्या कहना चाहेंगे?
हम तो यही कहते हैं कि इसको बंद कर दे, कोई दूसरा जहाज लगाएं। ये हमारे लोगों के बच्चों की जानें ले रहा है, और कितने जहाज क्रैश हो चुके हैं, और ये 1960 से पहले के हैं मेरे ख्याल।
फ्लाइट लेफ्टिनेंट अद्विता से आपके जो भतीजे हैं, आपकी आखिरी बार बातचीत कब हुई थी?
Sunil, I think we can let the family grieve in peace. Sunil, I appreciate that you're trying to get us some voices from the ground, but I think we should allow them to grieve in peace. We don't wish to be insensitive at all. But Sunil, I appreciate the job that you're doing there on the ground and being there with the family. Let's try and extend whatever help we can to them and help them in any way that we can, because we are also in touch with the family as they make their way to Jodhpur. But before we end this particular broadcast, and I hope we've answered all of the questions, one of the key questions is what will replace the MiG-21, the aircraft in which Flight Lieutenant Aditya Bal and Wing Commander Mohit Rana lost their lives. There are 4 MiG-21 squadrons that remain in service at this point of time. Just 4. That's a total of about 72 aircraft. The MiG-21s are to be retired in the next 3 to 4 years, because that's the end of their technical life. The indigenous Tejas fighters are set to arrive. We've contracted for 83 more of them. There are about 40 in service. 83 more are set to come. Those will start replacing the vacancies vacated by the MiG-21s. Now remember, there is also up to 114 foreign fighters that are to be procured. The air chief, the former air chief who we spoke to, was a bit skeptical about the speed in which that will happen. But there is F-16, F-18, F-16, F-15, the Rafale, the Gripen and other foreign fighters that are contending for this deal, which is basically a Make in India contest. The squadrons could be bolstered with more MiG-29s and Su-30s of Russian origin. That is also an option to increase our squadron strength with the retirement of the MiG-21s. There's also the possible acquisition of additional Rafale jets beyond just the 36 that have been acquired so far. India Today's National Bureau Chief Abhishek Bhalla, who has reported defense for many years, also with me. He's plugged into the defense procurement procedure as well. Abhishek, we've just heard an unusually candid former Air Chief Dhanoa blaming delays, the procurement system, politics over Rafale, etc., for the compulsions burdening the Air Force into pushing the MiG-21 towards the end of its technical life, which is a huge, thing to say, especially on national television. But as far as those replacements are considered, Abhishek, are they even in sight? How soon will they arrive?
Well, Shiv, first of all, former Air Chief Dhanoa, who was very candid with you on your show a little while back, has been always vocal and candid when it comes to this subject. And when in service, once he said that you don't see vintage cars made in 1963 on the roads in India, but you see them with the Indian Air Force in terms of the MiG-21. But coming to your question, what are the possible replacements? As far as the 114 foreign fighters that are still in contention, the process, unfortunately, is so slow, Shiv, that there is realization that's not the option, and that's why there is Plan B, and LCA Tejas is something that the Air Force is looking at to replace squadrons of the MiG-21 that will be phased out by 2025. The Air Force is hoping that by 2030 there would be at least 123 Tejas that will be part of the Indian Air Force. Other than that, if they can get their hands on any foreign fighter jets, that will be a bonus.
We'll have to see how that actually goes. Nobody's really holding their breaths considering how notoriously slow India's procurement process is. Will the deaths of 2 more young pilots be some kind of a turning point? One can't say. Let's hope so. We'll keep the pressure and continue to answer the questions right here. We owe it to Mohit Rana and Flight Lieutenant Aditya Bal. Abhishek, thank you very much for that. And we've got some breaking news coming in. A massive fire has broken out just now in the Andheri area of Mumbai. The fire has been reported in DN Nagar behind the Andheri Sports Complex in Mumbai. Fire tenders, these are live pictures coming in from the site. Fire tenders have reached the spot. Agencies have been mobilized, including the Mumbai Fire Brigade, police, traffic police, ward staff, water department, as well as Adani Energy. This is a live video frame of that blaze at the behind the Andheri Sports Complex in Mumbai. A large number of fire tenders are already at the spot. Okay, just a small correction. These are images from just a short while ago. These are not strictly live. These are from a few minutes ago of that blaze. I'll have a reporter live with us to tell us what the situation is on the ground and whether there is a threat to people in any of those structures there. We are told that the area around this blaze has been evacuated. I hope nobody is trapped in any of those buildings at this point of time. We'll keep you updated on that. I wanted to just show you what's happening there. Meanwhile, more news coming in. A scuffle has broken out between Congress MP Digvijay Singh and police outside the district panchayat office in Bhopal. This was after the Congress alleged that the police and administration were working under pressure of the Shivraj Singh Chauhan government during local body polls. So there was a hatapai, there was a scuffle, a physical scuffle between Digvijay Singh and the police. Let's just try and listen in.
पुलिस वालों के साथ काफी धक्का मुक्की हुई सर। ये फंदा के बीजेपी का पंचायत सदस्य है।
And up next, we're taking you back to coastal Karnataka, where another chilling murder has taken place in Mangaluru. This time, 23-year-old Fazil hounded and hacked to death by 4 to 5 assailants. A gruesome killing could be part of the cycle of violence that is plaguing the area following the killing of BJP youth worker Praveen. Is there a link? We'll tell you when you come back.
ये e-sports का प्रीमियर लीग ESPL है।
ESPL registration has been finished.
रुको पापा, 1 मिनट।
बेटा या तो मोबाइल में गेम खेल ले या टीवी देख ले, ये सब नहीं चलेगा।
पापा ये चलेगा नहीं, दौड़ेगा। कुछ भी नहीं पापा। असली ESPL तो अब शुरू हो रहा है। 16 टीम, सारे टॉप प्लेयर्स, 1 करोड़ का प्राइस पूल, बिग स्टेडियम, ग्रैंड ESPL, और ऐसा कि इंडियन e-sports में कभी हुआ ही नहीं। ESPL is back. Are you guys ready?
so hot and humid in your city that you're finding it difficult to fall asleep? Well, you are not alone. Hundreds and lakhs of people in India are facing this problem, and now it has been documented. It's now clear that heat waves are messing up our sleep patterns. This has to do largely with your body temperature in the night. Our bodies are tuned in to dropping body heat in the night to help us sleep. The hormone melatonin serves essentially as a natural alarm clock. When it's nighttime, it widens the blood vessels in our hands and feet to get rid of heat from our bodies. So what really happens when the air around us is too hot? When temperature goes up, deep sleep gets affected. Deep sleep for at least a few hours is the bare minimum we all need to ensure our body truly gets the rest it requires.
Sleep deprivation can lead to various mental health disorders. The most commonly seen are depression and anxiety. Chronic insomnia, that is chronic sleep disturbances, can lead to something called as early onset dementia, which is again a memory disorder. So it is important in order to maintain our mental health as well as physical health that we give ourselves adequate sleep.
Now, there is not just the problem of rising temperatures. There is also the problem of the pandemic. COVID-19 has interfered with our sleep patterns, and this too has now been documented. The pandemic ruined sleep cycles. The stress and anxiety of COVID added to the work from home patterns completely hit our lifestyle choices. A recent survey by a social media platform found that 54% Indians surveyed confirmed that their sleep patterns have changed post the pandemic. Many of these Indians speak about the fact that they're suffering from sleep apnea, finding it difficult to go off to sleep or sleep properly at a stretch altogether. This has now even got a term called coronasomnia, caused by personal stress, by grief of losing a loved one, and even anxiety over any COVID-related news.
You are watching India.
So Netflix seems to be having a major problem with passwords being shared, and it's being alleged that if you're going to share your Netflix password beyond your household, Netflix will charge you for it. For the first time in 10 years, Netflix has seen a drop in its subscriber base. They lost something close to 2 lakh subscribers in the first quarter of 2022, and mass password sharing is being touted as one of the major reasons for this. So you've subscribed to Netflix, but your friend hasn't, and you share your password with your friend, he logs in or she logs into it, and they're able to access it as well. Netflix is having a major problem with this because mass password sharing is being touted as one of the major reasons why Netflix has seen a drop in its subscribers for the first time in 10 years. Netflix lost something close to 2 lakh subscribers in the first quarter of 2022, and there are reports which suggest that there is going to be a further drop in its subscriber base, and that's why Netflix is having a major problem. Now, it was recently revealed in one of Netflix shareholder letters that some 100 million freeloading households are making use of Netflix services without paying for it, obviously. And out of these, some 30 million are in the US and Canada. Now, such freeloading households have obviously become a major problem for Netflix, and now it is being alleged that Netflix is trying out a much more strict policy wherein they're going to impose a fee for any extra member who's accessing the same Netflix account from a different household. It could be the equivalent of about $2 to $3 in any country's currency for that extra member who's accessing the same account. Now, there has been a lot of confusion because of these kind of reports which are coming in. First of all, people are very confused about what is the definition of household. Netflix has not commented on this yet. Secondly, there is a lot of confusion about if I have an account and I have the option of logging in from multiple devices and I share my password with a friend of mine who's logging in from one of those devices, Will I be charged for it? As per these reports, yes, I will be. But there is no clarity on this yet. As of now, this policy apparently has been rolled out only in Peru and Costa Rica, if reports are to be believed. In India, where you have big families living.
The cycle of violence continues in coastal Karnataka, where a third chilling murder in Mangaluru has taken place in just the last 8 days. The latest is 23-year-old Fazil, who was hacked to death with machetes by an unidentified group in Suratkal, just north of Mangaluru. Karnataka Chief Minister says he will soon implement the Uttar Pradesh model in the state to counter rising hate crimes. Here's more.
Karnataka's Mangaluru is on the boil. 3 chilling murders in the past 8 days. 23-year-old Fazil hacked to death on Friday. BJP youth wing leader Praveen Netaru hacked to death by bike-borne assailants on Tuesday. 18-year-old B. Masood killed by 8 persons in a road rage case on 21st July. While Mangaluru is known to be communally sensitive, this is a shocking new low for the coastal district of Dakshin Kannada. This shocking CCTV footage shows the gruesome murder of 23-year-old Fazil, who was hacked to death with machetes by an unidentified group in Surthakal, on the outskirts of Mangaluru on Friday. Fazil was immediately shifted to a hospital where he was declared dead. 13 people have been detained for Fazil's murder. Cops say the motive behind the incident and the identity of the culprits are being investigated.
We have got there is CCTV footages. We have to check all the CCTV footages in and around the area. And there is one vehicle which has been used for the purpose of commission of offence. So that vehicle may give us some lead. And we are sure that we'll crack the case very soon.
Keeping in view the sensitivity of the situation, police have imposed prohibitory orders around the area.
Yesterday evening at about 8 o'clock this incident has taken place. Since then 2 of our teams, technical teams and investigation teams, they are looking into zeroing upon who possibly would have done it. And we are largely concentrating on this cremation part because it is a very sensitive place and we do not want any untoward incident to happen.
Meanwhile, former Congress MLA Mohiuddin Bawa claims Fazil's murder is in retaliation to Praveen's murder, who was killed on 26 July.
ಅವನ ತಂದೆ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ನೋಡುವಾಗ ಹಳೆ ಗ್ರಜ್ಜಿನ ವಿಷಯ ಅಂತ ಕಾಣುತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ನಿನ್ನೆ ಆದ ಕೊಲೆಗೆ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರತ್ಯುತ್ತರವಾದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕೊಲೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂತಹದ್ದು ಒಂದು ಮಾತು ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ.
Karnataka Chief Minister Barmer says he'll soon implement UP model in state to counter rising hate crimes. Ex-Chief Minister H.D. Kumaraswamy has lashed out at Barmer.
I've instructed ADGP Laundry to stay there and see that prompt action is taken. For us, all incidents are equal, all murders, all life of the people are same to us. So we want to take strict actions on all the 3 cases. As and when required, whatever is necessary within the frame of law, we will do all actions. It might be UP model or Karnataka model.
ಏನು ಯೋಗಿ ಏನು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಇದು ಅಲ್ಲೋದ್ರೂ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾವ್ರು ಯೋಗಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತದೆ. ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಬುಲ್ಡೋಸರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡವ್ರೆ, ಯಾರ್ಯಾರ ಹಣ ಬರಗಳು ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಾನೀಗ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿ ತಂದರೆ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಜೆಪಿ ಬುಡು ಸಮೇತ ಕಿತ್ತು ಈ ನಾಡಿನ ಜನತೆ ಕಿತ್ತೆಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
The PFI has accused Barmer of trying to please the Sangh Parivar.
The statement of the Chief Minister of Karnataka regarding implementing something called as the Yogi model in Karnataka is nothing but signs of him trying to appease the Sangh Parivar and appease the Sangh Parivar workers. Everyone has seen the visuals of how the Sangh Parivar workers are upset with the BJP, and that is the reason we see that at a time when the Chief Minister should talk about peace and harmony, he is trying to please the Sangh Parivar with such statement.
Karnataka Chief Minister Barmer, who has announced the setting up of an anti-terror cell to handle such communal flare-ups, has handed over Praveen Netaru's probe to the NIA.
ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಕ್ರೈಮು ಮತ್ತು ಅಂತಾರಾಜ್ಯ ವಿಚಾರ ಇರಲಿಕ್ಕಿಂದ ಅದರ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣವಾದಂಥ ಮಾಹಿತಿಯನ್ನು ಲೇಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟಿಗೇಷನ್ ಏನು ಮಾಹಿತಿ ಇದೆ ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೇನೆ ಮತ್ತು ತನಿಖೆ ತೀವ್ರಗತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಹಿತಿಗಳನ್ನು ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡ ಮೇಲೆ ನಾನು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಲೆಟ್ರನ್ನು ಬರೆಯಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಇದನ್ನು NIA ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ತೀರ್ಮಾನವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ.
With Priyanka Rudurappa, Bureau Report, India Today.
Well, that's a wrap on 5 Live. Thanks for watching. I'll see you at the same time on Monday. But coming up next is 6 p.m. Prime with Pooja after a 50 crores cash seizure. Arpita Mukherjee in total meltdown. Full drama on day 8 of her arrest. Partha cries conspiracy, says he's being framed. It's a soundbite only on India Today's cameras. The big Bengal blockbuster drama coming up next with Pooja.